All right, Hobby Essentials, episode number 2. Let's take a look at the first item. This will be pretty quick. I purchased a lot of these 2 millimeter bullets for ESCs and motors since I use a lot of mini and micro planes and mini and micro power systems. I use a lot of 2 millimeter bullets. And one thing I like about these, the ones that I've used in the past were, they were completely enclosed. They were like a little tube on the end that you had to solder the wire into. What I like about these is they're cut off. They're cut off there at a taper at an angle on the very end of it, so that you have an open trough where you can solder your wire onto it and then cover it with heat shrink. It makes it a lot easier and a lot neater. There's less chance of overfilling it, with solder. So these work out really well. All these items will have links in the show notes to all these. So if you guys are interested in them, but I really like these 2 millimeter bullets. This is my second purchase of these now. The next item is Gemfan Wind Dancer series. These are 3028 3-blade polycarbonate props. One thing I like about these props is you can use them on 5 millimeter shafts, motors, and you can also use them on T-mounts. So they have these little plastic inserts in there that you can put in the prop hub to mount them onto a T-mount motor, or you can take the insert out to use it on a multi-rotor motor that has a 5 millimeter shaft. So you can use it on both types of motors, and I have both types of motors. I have quite a few 5 millimeter shaft motors as well as T-mount motors. Now, the reason that I purchased the 3028 3-blade props, and I have a plane that I'm currently converting to brushless that I'm going to test these on, but I'm using a higher kV motor. For a pusher motor, it's an 1105 5000 kV motor, and I think that these 3028s I think are really going to work well with this power system on 2S. I think these props would work really well all the way up to a 4S prop. I think that would work extremely well. Links to those will be in the show notes. Okay, so here's the motors I was speaking of. For years now, I have used my Racer Star BR 1306 motors, 3100 kV and 4000 kV. And I typically run those on 2S with a 5030 prop for a single tractor motor or even a dual tractor setup on a plane. I don't typically use those in the pusher configuration, but I do use them in tractor configuration. And I typically use them with a 5030 or a 5040 prop, 2-blade prop. And they work extremely well on my 2S power systems for that type of setup. They provide good power and they provide a good amount of flight time. I always wish that I could find one that was kind of in between the 3100 kV and the 4000 kV. The 4000 kV would give me, typically 4 or 5 more grams of thrust, but then it would use slightly more amps in order to give me those. So I was looking for something to replace my 1306s with, and I came across these 1804s, and they're in 3500 kV. So they're kind of in between the 3100 kV and the 4000 kV motors that I've been using for years. These are T-mount motors, but I do have some adapters. I can also use them with props that need a 5 millimeter shaft if I need to. But these 1804 3500 kV motors are almost identical in weight to my 1306s. I think these are only like a half a gram heavier than my 1306s. So these are going to work out really well as replacements for my old 1306s. These motors will have more torque, so they'll be able to spin the prop faster, which will give me more thrust, and I think it's going to pull fewer amps while doing that. So it's a win-win situation. So I have a plane that I'm going to be testing these on shortly, and there'll be links to these in the show notes. So I think these are going to be great going forward for 2S brushless power systems, whether it's a single or a twin motor, either one. And I think they might work really well in a pusher configuration too, with a prop that's got a little more pitch than the 3028s I was looking at before at 3500 kb. I think maybe the 3052 props that I have, or the 3x4x3 props, would work really well on these in a pusher configuration. All right, so I've been using some old 2S 1600 milliamp hour 25C lipos that I've had for a long time. And they're kind of puffed, you know, they're old, they got a lot of cycles on them, they're kind of puffed. I used to use them as flight batteries in a couple of planes, and they got to the point where they just didn't provide the amps anymore, so I thought I'll use them in my transmitter. And they worked really well. You know, I've been using them for a couple of years in my transmitter, but now they're so old and they've had so many charges on them, they've gotten to the point where they just don't last very long, even in a transmitter anymore. So it came time to replace them. So I bought this. It's a nice fit in my TX16S, which is what I've got it installed in here. It gives me a lot longer operating time on my transmitter than those old batteries I was using. The size of this is a 66 millimeter by 37 millimeter by 17 millimeter. And as you can see, there's still a lot of space available inside the battery bay on my TX16S. It's also compatible with a lot of other transmitters. So if you take a look at the link for this battery, it'll have a list of different transmitters that it's compatible with. But it has this red JST discharge cable, and it has a standard balance cable, you know, with the 3 wires in it. And then it also has another discharge cable that just has the ground and the hot wire in it. So there are some transmitters, I guess, that require a discharge type connector rather than a balance connector. So in that case, you've got one connector that gives you just the ground and the hot wire, you know, the full 7.4 volts or 8.44 volts for a fully charged LiPo. And then you've also got the balance. Now, I can use either one. I can use either the balance connector on the TX16S or just the discharge connector that has the just the hot wire and the ground wire. Either one of them will work on the TX16S, so that's not a problem. And it's a fairly inexpensive battery. It's a 2S 2000 milliamp hour 8C. You know, because the transmitter at the highest power output, I think, is just 100 milliwatt. So it doesn't use any amps at all. 8C LiPo 2000 milliamp hour. I mean, that's 16 amps. The transmitter is going to pull just a tiny fraction of that. So this battery is going to work really well. There'll be a link in the show notes. All right, and last but not least, are wheel collars. Now, for some of my mini planes, they're a little bit heavier. They use 3 millimeter strut, 3 millimeter stainless wire as struts and axles. And what I like using for the wheels on these axles, whether it's a 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter, or 3 millimeter struts and axles, are these wheel collars with the grub screws on them. You can see here there's a grub screw. So I buy these in packs of like 20, and these are 3.1 millimeter, so that they work perfectly on the 3 millimeter axle. It also comes with an Allen wrench so that you can tighten and loosen them up. I've never had a problem with any of my wheel collars, whether it's the smallest ones or the largest ones that I use. And you know they're going to secure your wheels onto your axles. They're not going to come loose. So there'll be links to those in the show notes. There are additional items, of course, on episode 1 of Hobby Essentials. There will be a link in the show notes to the playlist for Hobby Essentials. So if you want to look at those, I'm trying to make progressive episodes of these whenever I make my hobby order. I usually wait until I've got several items that I need to order. And then when those come in and I have a chance to evaluate them, I'll put together another one of these episodes. So over time, you'll be able to see exactly what it is that I'm purchasing for myself. So, and all of these items that I list here all work extremely well. So you know it's money well spent. All right, so that's a wrap on this episode. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time in the Tinkerz Lab.